Welcome everybody into another edition of the Wicked Philthy Podcast. My name is Matt Santoleri, and I'm flying solo on this evening. I'm recording this podcast super late at night, and I just decided, let's hook the microphone up while I do what I do anyway, a lot of the time before the NFL draft, and that is mock drafts. So I potted up the FanSpeak mock draft simulator. I'm going to be drafting here for the Philadelphia Eagles to see what they might do come April in the draft. We know that they have a lot of draft capital, 10 picks to basically use this upcoming draft off of the picks that they already own, plus some comp picks that they earned as well. And so, with that in mind, I have the mock draft simulator working, and the only thing about the mock draft simulator here is I am cheap, and therefore I'm using the free version, which means there will be no trades. So where I think the Eagles could be trading up, trading down, maybe a lot of movement, depending on players that are there on the board, come pick 21, this will not be that time. So I'm looking at 21, and we look at the needs there that are on the team before free agency starts, which obviously if they bring in a guy like Byron Jones or James Bradbury, or on the wide receiver spot, bring in a Robbie Anderson or big dreaming an Amari Cooper, then the big spots there at corner and wide receiver that a lot of people are saying are the team's biggest needs might not be there. Safety is obviously still on the board. Malcolm Jenkins' situation is still unclear. Rodney McLeod is a free agent, so we'll see how that works. And edge rusher is another big one too, with the lack of production really, I think, from those spots. I think Derek Barnett's been fine. I think he's been a good pass rusher, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle his contract coming up very soon. Has he been that good to where, the contract that he might get there on the open market, the Eagles are willing to match? Brandon Graham, obviously getting a little older in the tooth every day of the week. When it comes down to it, maybe getting somebody in there is going to be a big spot for them. So, big need, I think, still in the team is edge rushing. I would sit that behind those other three, and then the other one is linebacker. Nigel Bradham, obviously not on the team, and going into this year, we've got Nate Gary on the team, TJ Edwards on the team, and Alex Singleton. So you've got those three guys, Camu Grugier-Hill kind of up in the air too to see if he comes back. So I think a need there at linebacker is big too. So pick 21. I ran the draft simulator, and what do you know it? All the players that everyone wants at 21 are gone, and that is the three big wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs. All three of those guys go top 15, top 14 actually. And at 15, the Denver Broncos maybe take a little bit of a reach, but go after the other guy that maybe some Eagles fans were saying, okay, I can see that at 21, and that is Laviska Shenault out of Colorado. So all the good wide receivers that a lot of people have been talking about at 21 off the board. Now, guys like T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk are still on the board here, but maybe a little bit of reaches at 21. Could I see them trading back a little bit and still taking a stab at one of those guys? Of course, but being that we're not trading, like I said, and we're sticking, put at 21, I think that's a little bit of a reach. The corners, C.J. Henderson, and right before we pick, at 20, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Christian Fulton come off the board as well. And then early on, as we all kind of expected, Jeffrey Okudah is off the board as well, going to the Detroit Lions. So all the corners that I think a lot of people were saying, okay, at 21, I can see that off the board. So where do we go? And for me, I think it's a fairly easy pick to make here in this spot. A lot of people might not feel that way because, again, the clamoring for a weapon for Carson Wentz to grow with and to use. But for me, it's safety out of Alabama, Xavier McKinney. He's a guy who I think can step right on in and serve a role for the team. And then come time when Malcolm eventually walks away, if it's not this year, depending on what happens with the contract, obviously he's still under contract, but we know how players can sit out and kind of force trades and things like that. If that's not the case, then I think he can step right on into the Rodney McLeod role. And going forward, I don't think he would be the worst option to replace Malcolm. He does a little bit of everything like Malcolm does, is good in the box, in coverage, and played there at Alabama in a high-pressure situation pretty much every snap of his college career. So a lot of good guys there. Now we're looking here in the second, and I was hoping to see maybe one of the really stellar cornerbacks still be on the board there for us to pick. And the last one that went, again, 2 picks before us, 2, and it sucks, Dallas Cowboys, was A.J. Terrell. So we don't get a shot at A.J. Terrell in the second round. We look there for the other corners that go into this round as well. We're going to see, Jalen Johnson go, Jeff Gladney go, Trayvon Diggs. So, again, a lot of guys who maybe we want to take a stab there at the cornerback spot off the board. Now, there's still some good corners on the board, but I think we might be able to wait a little bit on one of those corners and maybe address another spot of need, and that is the wide receiver position. So, a lot of people feel differently about this guy. I like him a lot. I think he would be an incredible addition to the team. He brings the missing speed element, and it's a guy who, fans around here have obviously had a good chance to look at grow, and that is KJ Hamler out of Penn State. Let's reunite him with Miles Sanders, who obviously came out of Penn State last year, was a second-round draft pick. So in back-to-back years, the Philadelphia Eagles take some Nittany Lions there in the second round, and that round there kind of rounds out a little bit after us. We do see Jonathan Taylor come off the board. At the corner spot, we do lose Cameron Dantzler, but I still think there's some other guys on the board who we might be able to target there in the third round. That would be some better fits in the cornerback spot. So we're looking there, going down. Let's see how this all kind of falls for us. We do see Jonathan Greenard go there, which that kind of sucks. I like him a lot. I think he'd be a great pick there from the edge rusher spot. Tyler Badaz out off the board. Zach Moss, a big brooding back, off the board. We also see Denzel Mims, one of my favorite targets in the third round, come off the board. But again, need here at the cornerback position. Seeing another guy who I really like, which is Damon Arnett, come off a few picks before us. That does sting, but we do have another guy on the board still, and his name is Bryce Hall out of Virginia. Is he the perfect cornerback, guy? I don't think so, but I think in the third round, where a lot of people were expecting him to possibly go top 60, or at least top 64 there between the first 2 rounds, I think here at pick 85, it's incredible value for us. It gets a guy who I believe can be a starter for us, maybe a low end 2 kind of year 1, and maybe grow into being a little bit more than that. So let's take a stab here at Bryce Hall out of Virginia. Now we're waiting for our pick to come back up here. We do see Malik Harrison come off the board, linebacker at Ohio State. I like him a lot. Lloyd Cushenberry at LSU, interior lineman. Matt Pert, the offensive tackle. Terrell Burgess off the board, but that's fine because we have Xavier McKinney. That stinks. Darrell Taylor. I was hoping he might fall and we could address that edge position, but that is not happening. So if that's the case, we can't really address edge without really reaching. Do we want to double dip early at wide receiver? I think you can make the case, but I also think that that's a spot where, whether it is an Amari Cooper or Robbie Anderson or a top-notch talent, I think it's somewhere where they might go in free agency to address at least a little bit. And so I'm going to wait at least one more pick on that, and that's because I think the interior line is one that needs to be addressed with the guard spot there, figuring out who's going to play left guard. Obviously, the talk of who's going to play left tackle has dominated the offseason here. Is Jason Peters going to be back, or will the Eagles turn the keys on over to first-round pick in 2019, Andre Dillard? I'm looking at a guy like Matt Hennessy out of Temple to come on in and potentially be that starting guard, and then eventually replace Kelsey at that center spot if Kelsey decides to walk away kind of sooner rather than later. Another couple guys there that I really didn't want to see come off the board, like Van Jefferson, Chase Claypool, kind of going up a little bit there and looking at some of the other needs that we had on this team. Ezra Cleveland comes off the board from the tackle spot. A lot of that does sting a little bit, but I still think that we found ourselves in a pretty good spot where we can address a lot of our needs without reaching too far and going ahead and getting good talent. And this is the spot where I'm going to go ahead and get another wide receiver, I believe. And that wide receiver, I'm going to choose another speed guy. So depending on what happens here with KJ Hamler, we're going to address speed even more. And that's with a guy out of Texas named Devin Duvernay. I like him a lot. Again, guy who kind of tested really, really well and can bring some immediate impact here to the team. Now, from the running back spot, again, we know we still need a running back. We know that's obviously on the board still for us. So that's something where I do want to address here in this round, because let's face it, we have 3 picks in the 4th round. I think this is a spot where we have the luxury of going out and attacking running back early and making sure we get our guy, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to get A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. A.J. Dillon, again, tested out of the roof for a guy of his size. I mean, he is a human bowling ball. A lot of people were talking about having to transfer over and possibly play fullback at the next level. That's how big he is. And so I like him a lot. He brings the other element that the team needs from the running back spot to complement Miles Sanders out of the backfield in the passing game, and that gives us a guy we can work with here. Now is the time where we can address linebacker. So it sucks to see Troy Dye come off where he went. I really was kind of targeting him with that following pick there. But obviously he came off the board, and that sucked. So with that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and get another guy who I like a lot, and that is Willie Gay Jr. out of Mississippi State. Had some off the field issues, was removed from the team there for a little while, but came in to the combine and was just an athletic freak. I mean, he out-tested Patrick McQueen and Kenneth Murray in the 40, as well as in the vert in the broad jump. So I think he's a guy who can bring a lot to the table. He just has to kind of get maybe a little bit of a better head on his shoulders and make sure that he doesn't punch teammates for disagreements. That obviously cannot happen. So going to bring him in, though, and I think he can step on in and be a really key contributor in the linebacking room for him. So now we have the option again. We could double dip there at corner. Darnay Holmes out of UCLA still on the board. We could go double on the Temple products and grab Harrison Hand, who, foregone his senior year. A lot of people were talking to see, how he would end up shaking out, how things would happen with him. I like him a lot, but at the same time, is that the pick here to go out and get another corner? I think the double dip a lot of people expect is on corner and on wide receiver, and again, that's all depending on what happens here with the rest of free agency and how those players kind of break out for him. And so, you know what? I'm kind of talking myself into it because we've already addressed basically all the needs on the team besides edge. And right before we picked Alton Robinson, who is one of my favorite edge players in this area, comes right off the board. So without reaching too far down and grabbing somebody who I'm fairly certain will be there when the pick comes back around to us, I'm going to go ahead and address the cornerback spot again and double dip here. And you know what? I'm going to grab Harrison Hand just because, I'm going to pay some respect there to the Temple name. I think it's a school that has produced some good players here in recent memory. I also think that it's just a team that, between playing all of their home games there at Lincoln Financial and just being, a team that's local, a team that the Eagles probably have a whole lot of tape on and a whole lot of respect for, and could be a spot where we see them, kind of go after a guy from there. And so we did that. Now, picture coming back around, we're in the 6th round here. And again, this is where I thought, hey, a guy like this might come back around to us, and I wasn't wrong. We have Carter Coughlin out of Minnesota there on the edge spot. I'm going to go ahead and grab him to be a good rotational guy from the edge who can step on in and give him quality snaps, I think, fairly right away. At worst, he's going to bring basically what Josh Sweat and players like that have brought, in recent memory. So with that being the case, I think he's an easy pick to make here in the 6th round. Now we get 2 6th-round picks. You got the comp pick and the regular pick. The one was, I think, from a trade. And then we have a regular pick here in this round. And so here I'm going to look down a little bit and just trying to see, who's going to be on the board here, who could possibly be the right player to kind of target, and a lot of it has to do with our needs. So the 2 biggest needs here on the team right now are quarterback and at DL. That's what Fanspeak gives us, trying to find that backup quarterback, and then there on the defensive line. And again, this is a player who I don't think will be here in the time for the real draft. I don't really expect this to really shake out this way, because I think he tested pretty well, and I think he's also a guy who has a lot of really good tape on him. But could be this would be the steal of the draft, I think, if they got him here. But Davon Hamilton out of Ohio State still on the board, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take him just because, again, addressing big needs for the team, getting a guy to kind of step in, maybe be that opposite of Fletcher Cox in the near future, and at worst give you again a little bit of kind of what Timmy Jernigan had brought to the team. I think that's an easy pick to make, and that is our pick in the 6th round, which I believe is the last pick because the Eagles do not have a 7th round draft pick. So we're gonna let this mock draft simulator run itself out. Just see what guys were taken there in the 7th that maybe have a little bit of staying power. Calvin Throckmorton gets picked, offensive tackle out of Oregon. Nate Stanley out of Iowa. So not going to be there in the free agent pool to maybe pull from. And I like Nate Stanley. I think he's a guy who could be a backup quarterback. John Runyon. So obviously we've got the Runyon kid going off the board there in the 7th. Alex Highsmith, I like him a lot out of Charlotte. Small school kid. He comes off, another guy who if they didn't go after, the Carter Coughlin or anything like that, and maybe we're looking in the free agency pool, who might have been there, is not there anymore to kind of choose from. So we're looking here. We have our 1st round pick was Xavier McKinney, safety out of Alabama. 2nd round pick was KJ Hamler out of Penn State. We have Bryce Hall in the 3rd round with our 1st pick, and then Matt Hennessy to come in out of Temple, center, could play some guard. Devin Duvernay in the 4th. A.J. Dillon, the big bruising back out of Boston College in the 4th, and Willie Gay to round out those 3, 4th picks. I mean, maybe we could do a little bit better than Devin Duvernay, but A.J. Dillon and Willie Gay Jr. in the 4th, I don't think we're doing much better than that. Harrison Hand in the 5th to kind of do that double dip that I was talking about at the cornerback spot like we did at wide receiver. Carter Coughlin out of Minnesota, and to round it on out, again, the steal of the draft is Davon Hamilton at Ohio State. So according to Fanspeak, the only position we did not address was quarterback, and did that on purpose. I mean, it's Carson Wentz's team. This is not a team that is looking for their next starter. It's not something that I want to waste one of those picks on early to kind of go after and get a guy like that when I believe that Nate Sudfeld coming back and being the backup quarterback is probably a lot more likely than them going out and doing the same thing they did last year with using a pick like they did on Clayton Thorson, just to see him not even make it out of training camp and out of preseason onto the roster, having to be a casualty and obviously not find himself in better luck anywhere else. So again, instead of spending that pick there, I spent it there on Davon Hamilton, on Willie Gay Jr., on Carter Coughlin, and I think that's a way better allocation of resources. Even if those guys weren't to make the team, even if they didn't make a big impact, it's a bigger impact on the team than it would be to go after, again, a guy who's going to end up just being a third-string quarterback to make the team want to go out and sign another 40-year-old like they did when they went out and got Josh McCown last year. So this is the mock draft. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope to do maybe a couple more of these as the season goes on, or as the off season goes on, going into free agency. We'll kind of get a look at to see how some of the needs kind of break down for the team, and maybe we don't have to double dip at corner or wide receiver, and we can use those draft picks elsewhere and take some more luxury picks. Maybe take a stab at a running back earlier, or at some of those more higher end wide receivers. Not feel too bad about it. So we'll see how that works. Again, thanks for you guys tuning in, and that'll do it from us here at Wicked Philthy.